Hello, welcome. Today I will be discussing scales, which are parasitic insects which belong to the family Coccoidea. Some of these species love to be colonized on orchids, specifically Phalaenopsis orchids, and as a result, they can kill your plant. This parasitic infection spreads so fast, and if you're not careful enough, or if you do not pay attention, they will completely destroy all of your orchids in just a matter of months. As you can see here, I have a lot of orchids that have been overcome by this parasite. This is my death rate. As you can see, there are many orchids. I even have flowers here and leaves and stems. And this parasite, it attacks every part of the orchid and it manages to kill it off really quickly. So the parasites that you see here on this orchid is actually a female which holds about 3,000 eggs. I could see it under the microscope here. I have one crushed under this lens and I can put it into my microscope and take a look. So where and how can you get these parasitic insects? You can bring them in with newly purchased orchids, or if you happen to keep your orchids outside during the summer months, you might also bring it in that way. So step number one is preventing. You want to prevent your orchid from getting these. So what way to do that is to keep your plant in isolation for a couple of weeks after bringing it home or after bringing it in from your garden. Sometimes it is hard to notice these tiny pearl-like insects attached. So quarantine can help you recognize this danger and take appropriate action. If you notice orchids in your collection with scale problems, you should isolate that pot immediately and treat it with respect and care. Otherwise, you will lose a lot of plants. As you can see, how many of my mistakes and delays have harmed my orchids and have caused many of them to die. Scales cause the leaves to look dehydrated, yellows, sometimes produce soft red spots with necro tissue. They also produce large amounts of sticky, viscous fluid on which sooty mold can grow. So as you can see here, it has ruined the crown of the orchid, and some of the young crawlers are still here. All these young leaves, everything has been destroyed, and yet they still live on the orchid. Right here, they're very small. Sometimes these scales can also result in fungus growth. This can also be a result in reduced photosynthesis. Young are hatched from the eggs. These are called crawlers, and they actually have legs. They have legitimate legs and can travel from plant to plant, as you can see here in this image under a microscope. They are so tiny and you actually cannot see them without a magnifying glass. Through the microscope they look like that. When the crawler finds a good place to feed, they penetrate the leaves or the other parts of the plant with their mouth, and they start feeding and growing. Males are smaller than females and they do not have a very long life. They die right after fertilizing the female. Scales feed on the orchid sap and slowly take the life away from the plant, and finally they kill them. It is one of the many reasons why orchids die, and if you cannot respect the cause, you have to take action against the scales or else they will kill them. I have tried many ways to try and kill this parasite. I personally didn't find isopropyl alcohol to be very useful, but actually was more harmful and not effective as the many recommendations suggest online. When you take a swab and rub the leaves with the alcohol, water soap solution, it is actually evaporating really fast and it cools down the leaves, causing damage, especially for some of the delicate varieties of orchids. And it will definitely not cover anything, so the scales will breed again. I also found peroxide to be useless as well. It was actually a very fast reacting chemical and with a very short half-life. So it reacts into water and oxygen in just minutes. Besides that, it has many chemicals and it is way too hard to get under the protective scale of the parasite. And this is why many pesticides are not effective, so I do not recommend this method. I am against synthetic herbicides or herbicidal soap. They are dangerous for humans and for your pets, and they will absolutely not penetrate the scale and its protective coating. But my method, which I'll introduce to you soon, has been proven with effectiveness. So the second step after isolating your orchids is going to be changing the substrate. So male scales like to live inside the orchid's substrate. So we need to eliminate that and we need to take them away. I need to disinfect my pot as well before reusing it. I need to kill all of the scales, so I'm going to be giving them a bath in my homemade solution, because only submerging the whole plant into the solution will be a surefire way to kill all the parasites. So cut off any of the old roots and make sure you get rid of all the old substrate. So step 3 will be preparing the soap solution. I am simply going to use this Linda laundry soap. For more than 200 years, people have been using soap as a natural organic method to fight pests on agricultural and houseplants. It works with direct contact with the pests via the disruption of cell membranes when the insect is penetrated with the fatty acids found within the soap. The insect cells leak their contents, causing the insect to dehydrate and eventually die. Laundry soap contains limonene, a long chain, carbon chain fatty acid with a carbon number of 10, which is more effective and safe than regular bath soap, which can be used too, but for the bath soap, it's normally made with shorter carbon chains, like palm oil or coconut oil, and stronger chains, fatty acids. So these can be much more damaging for the plants. It is recommended to make 2% soap solutions. What we're going to need is about 2 to 3 heads of garlic. So we're just going to blend that into a paste. So garlic has been proven to have insecticidal effects because of the essential oils that are released. So that's why we are using it in this solution. Just simply take your paste, put it into the water, rinse your little blender in there, and we have to let it sit and sort of marinate to release everything that it needs to in order to actually begin the insecticidal process. So with our third ingredient will be olive oil. This solution will also act as a repellent, which will prevent the further spread of these scales. So just add your olive oil. And then our soap solution is ready. We're simply going to submerge our orchid into the solution and begin planting it into our new disinfected pot. So make sure you fully submerge your orchid into the water. If you see any visible scales, take them off with your hands, scrape them off lightly. Olive oil also helps maintain that repellent and keep it on your leaves. So it has like a sticky type effect. Makes it oily. And as we all know, that oil is very hard to get off. So it makes sure that the solution stays on the plant for longer and the repellent effect lasts longer. Make sure you fully submerge your orchid in your solution for about 4 to 5 minutes to make sure that everything has been touched by the solution and that it has been absorbed. And then you'll be able to repot and replant your orchid into a new disinfected pot with a new media. Just wanted to show you something very interesting that I noticed. I sprayed this solution onto this orchid, onto the bottom of the orchid. As you can see here, the leaves are healthy and they're healing. But one thing that I noticed was that these scales have traveled to the top of the orchid. The part that I didn't spray, the part that was untouched by the solution, they had escaped from the media onto the top of this stem right here. So I am removing this stem from my orchid. As you can see here, I cut it off so it will no longer be on my orchid. So this is just proof that my solution has worked. The parts that I sprayed with the solution are healthy. They have no scales on them, but the only part that I didn't spray have all the scales on them. They have run from the media to the top of this stem right here. If you do not have fresh media, you can submerge the entire orchid with the pot into the solution. Make sure you're doing the same, taking off any visible scales. And make sure you're submerging your entire orchid into the media and leaving it in there for about 4 minutes. Solution, I would not recommend that you spill it out. What you can do is just simply sift all of the garlic out and then use it as a spray for your orchids and periodically spray. However, I do believe that doing this solution only once on your orchids should be enough to protect them from the scales for the rest of their plant life. So you feel free to take the garlic out and put it into a spray bottle to have it and keep it with you. Thank you so much for watching. I know that this method will work for you, so please give it a try. Leave any comments, questions, or concerns below, and don't forget to subscribe.